Well, hello everyone, Texie88 here and welcome to my latest review. And now we're taking a look at Super Street Fighter 2 for the Commodore Amiga. And I believe this was only for the AGA Amigas, i.e. the Amiga 1200 and the Amiga 4000. As far as I know, it wasn't compatible with any other type of Amiga. And it was released in the arcades by Capcom in 1993, and its full title is Super Street Fighter 2: The New Challengers. This version was the responsibility of US Gold, and it seems like Capcom also worked with them on that one. And this particular game came out in 1995, so it was towards the end of the Amiga's golden age, because Commodore US had filed for voluntary bankruptcy in March of the preceding year, and the Amiga market was no longer as buoyant as it had been by 1995 when this game finally came out. You got some nice images so far. Now I've played the US Gold's port of the Street Fighter 2: The World Warrior, which was the first Street Fighter 2 game, and yeah, that really wasn't much to write home about. It didn't play very well, and even on a joystick that had two independent fire buttons, the special moves were too hard to pull off, and it was generally slow, jerky, and unresponsive, and audio visually it left much to be desired as well. My understanding is they did look into doing a 6-button controller or joystick for that, but the cost involved was too prohibitive. Unfortunately, the gameplay, the way it was done, required 6 buttons, so that was ultimately no good. And as you see just then, this game supports CD32 pads. And CD32 pads have 6 buttons, so you've got the usual super battle and versus battle, and as you saw, you can change the speed of things. So let's do a super battle. And one thing I'm already impressed by is it's actually got it's got better sounding music than it did for the Amiga port of the original Street Fighter 2, and it's got all the new characters, T-Hawk, Fei Long, DJ, and Cammy, and I didn't actually select Cammy. I did it too long, but I'm up against Blanca. But I think I can remember Cammy's moves. The first thing I've noticed is graphics. I've seen better on the. I've seen a lot worse, but I've also seen a lot better. And I also noticed that the ground doesn't follow perspective the way it does on the way it does on the original arcade version, even on the console versions. Yeah, I'm not used to Cammy, so as I said, I didn't actually select her. The game selected it for me because I was dithering too long on that menu screen. So But one thing I have noticed more importantly than anything is that this actually plays really well. Unlike US Gold's rather disappointing port of normal Street Fighter 2 on the Amiga, this one actually plays decently. Just goes to show if you've got the right team behind it, so you can still come up with a playable title. And yeah, I'm kind of hoping that Blanca would beat me there, because although I don't hate Cammy, I'm just not used to her. Yeah, no music there, which is a bit of a disappointment. There would have been a and there'd have also been music on that countdown, which is again is a bit of a sad loss. But let's pick Ryu. Ryu and Ken are mainstays of the Street Fighter franchise and been in it right from the very beginning. And one thing I've noticed is that the controls are exactly what you'd expected them to be from the original arcade and from the console version. So if you're used to, say, the Super Nintendo or Mega Drive version of, especially if you're using if you're using 6-button controllers on the Mega Drive version, or Mega Drive being say Genesis if you're in North America, then you're going to be right at home here. The controls are exactly as you're expecting, as I was expecting them to be. And they even kept in the slow motion when you defeat your opponent. Even that didn't make it into the Amiga port of the normal Street Fighter 2. Yeah, anyone who was disappointed by that previous Amiga version of Street Fighter 2 will be pleasantly surprised at this version. I think if they can get past its slightly grotty exterior and the sound not being particularly brilliant, it plays really well, and that's ultimately where this version is. Notice how I was able to pull off Ryu's orange-coloured Hadouken. They've actually genuinely included that, and you pull that off exactly the same way as you would have pulled that particular version off normally. But you can still pull off a regular Hadouken like that in exactly the same way that you'd be used to from the arcade and console version. So you definitely want to be playing this with a CD32 controller or the 6-button controller to get it at its most playable. And even the Shenlong Dragon Punch there is pulled off in exactly the same way as you'd expect from you. Yeah, this is already a much more faithful and better port on the Amiga. Or not get hit by it like you just did then. So now I'm up against Fei Long. No plain sound there, which is also a bit of a shame. No music here on this versus screen. Wait for it to load. And it's even kept in the first attack idea that was introduced in this particular incarnation of Street Fighter 2. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes, it is a shame that the floor doesn't follow the perspective the way it does in console versions and in the original arcade version. But if it means that it plays well enough, I suppose it's an easy enough sacrifice to make. And it seems, and unlike the previous Amiga Street Fighter 2 game, at least it seems to have a lot of the different music for the different stages, whereas it only had a select few of them. And in case you're wondering, yes, you can waggle left and right to shake off a dizzy, just like you could in the original arcade version. So that's also a plus. I don't think that actually made any difference in the Amiga port of Street Fighter 2, the World Warrior. And now I'm up against another of the characters introduced in this game, the Jamaican fighter DJ. I do like the artwork in there on that loading screen. And I did actually do a bit of playtesting of some of the other characters I was familiar with in preparation for this review, and again, pretty much every character I was most familiar with. Their moves on the CD32 style controller worked exactly as you'd expect them to from the original arcade version and 6-button console equivalent. See, I managed to do a recovery and I just wiped left and right to do that, just like you would in the original arcade version. So, while it'd be a bit of a stretch to call this game arcade perfect, at least it plays like reasonably enough like the arcades to stand up to scrutiny. It even got the double hit thing, which another thing was the double hits never really made it into the previous Street Fighter 2 port on the Amiga either. As far as I know, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition and Street Fighter 2 Turbo never actually made it to the Amiga. And those two games were the two in between Street Fighter 2 The World Warrior and this. Bonus stage. Although even kept in the double hit of the attacks kicks, it was nice. Yeah, I'm really impressed with how this plays. As I said, anyone who has a CD32 style controller and was disappointed with the way US Gold's disappointing port of the previous Street Fighter 2 game turned out are going to be pleasantly surprised by this if they were to give it a try, even with these slight shortcomings like slight lack of music and the audio visual polish not being quite up to the standards of other versions. This plays well, and that's ultimately the main thing. As you can hear, some of the sounds are a bit rough around the edges. So for the Amiga, especially the AGA Amigas, I expected better quality than that. Oh, it's somersault kick on me. Or flash kick, I've heard it called both. There seems to be some dispute as to whether that move that Guile just did on me is either a flash kick or a somersault kick. I mean, some people call it a moon kick, which is a bit strange, but I can see where the name would come from. But officially, I've only ever heard it or seen it called somersault kick or flash kick. Yeah. And there's very little in the way of animation in the background. Again, that could have been a compromise made to keep the playability and speed good enough for the game to stand a chance of being even remotely playable. God, it don't really think there's much more to say about this conversion, but except fans of Street Fighter 2 who, as I said, were disappointed with the way US Gold's Amiga port of the original Street Fighter 2 came out will be pleasantly surprised with how well this generally plays and feels in comparison to that. I mean, some of the ways you pulled off certain special moves in that version will change, whereas if you're using a CD32 style controller like I am now, then pretty much everything controls exactly as you'd expect. Well, I think we're going to end the review there now. So that's Super Street Fighter 2 for the Commodore Amiga. Very commendable port despite some slight cosmetic issues. Graphics, well, the intro is nice, but the actual in-game graphics aren't the best I've seen on the Amiga. They're not the worst, but they're not the best, especially as this is an AGA version as well. So, and it is a shame that there's little to no animation in the background. Like there is in the original version, but it's still. But if you're using a six-button control, you've got all the three different strengths of kick and punch, just like you're used to in the original arcade. And things animate reasonably well enough, considering. Sound, well, as I said in preparation for this review, I'd done a bit more playing besides what you just saw me doing in this review, and while it's good that much of the music, the different music from the different stages made it into the game, it's a shame that the actual quality of the music doesn't really come up to snuff compared to what particularly AGA Amiga owners would be used to. I kind of feel that the sound, and especially the music, could have sounded better than it actually does. But again, the visuals and the cosmetics are generally just feelings towards the audio-visual aspect of the game. Where's more important, and always will be, is in the gameplay. And the gameplay in this version is where this particular version triumphs, especially if you were shocked by how disappointing US Gold's port of Street Fighter 2 The World Warrior had been a few years earlier. I mean, even despite the audio-visual shortcomings, it genuinely feels like the people responsible for this port cared enough to make a product that's playable and takes advantage of people potentially having CD32 controllers or some other six-button controller that approximates to it, and everything, it just feels right. It feels like Super Street Fighter 2 should, and that's ultimately why I'm impressed with this port. It's one of the few times that US Gold, particularly on the 16 and 32-bit Amigas, can actually at last get a bit more of a thumbs up than people might be used to them getting. because to be fair, a lot of their arcade ports range from disappointing to downright awful, with only the odd one or two gems like this turning up. But luckily, this did turn out to be a gem, and it's just a shame that it came after quite a few people might have already ditched the Amiga due to its market buoyancy having suffered since what happened to Commodore US in the preceding year. So I don't know how many people would have remained faithful to the Amiga to have still been willing to take a chance on it, especially given how disappointing Street Fighter II: The World Warrior turned out to be on the Amiga, whereas this was a real eye opener and plays really well. Very impressed with it. I'm not going to be overly mean about the audio-visual flaws, as they don't really affect the gameplay enough. And gameplay should always be the most important thing. It is here, especially if you're using 6-button controller. And yeah, this gets a thumbs up from me. So I'm going to give Super Street Fighter 2 for the Commodore Amiga 8 out of 10. But I'll give it 6 out of 10 if you're not using a 6-button controller, because the gameplay does suffer as a result of that, I'm afraid. I have tried it, and I just couldn't get along with it. It just wasn't as playable. You really need 6 buttons for this game. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. Catch you on another one soon. Texie88 out.